Heat Celtics game 7. What a game that was. Well, we thought it was going to be. For the first quarter, Boston took a lead. Miami was down in the beginning, but for Miami, they didn't panic. They settled into their shots, they settled into their offense. They got into the zone that worked for them the entire game. But for me, the first half, watching that game, I mean, you can't take away from Jason Tatum getting hurt in the first 26 seconds of the game, went up for the layup, rolled the ankle. Celtics fans were, holding their hands over their head. It was tough to watch, but give credit to Miami. I mean, Tatum played that entire game. So people are going to sit here and say, well, Boston, Tatum got hurt. Yeah, but Miami played without Gabe Vincent in game 5. Tyler Hero didn't play this entire series. No Victor Oladipo. And if you want to cancel those players out and you just want to say Tatum is superior than all those players, absolutely. But he still played the entire game 7. And yeah, the injury really affected him because you could just see throughout the game he couldn't rotate on defense. He wasn't able to get to his spots. He would shoot threes at times and he just looked so, out of sort and out of sync just from that ankle injury from the beginning of the game. Were we robbed of a great game 7 because of Tatum's injury? I don't think so. Miami had a great game plan coming into this game. They didn't get discouraged when they were potentially robbed of game 6, a game they should have won if it wasn't for that miraculous tip in by Derek White. But let's talk about Caleb Martin. He was outstanding in the first half. 14 points, 7 rebounds. In the first few minutes, he had five rebounds. I looked up at the stat sheet and I said, whoa. But a guy like Caleb Martin is so interesting and so fascinating because he's an undrafted player out of Nevada, was drafted by the Hornets, finding his way in the league, gets on to the Heat, gets to Miami, and struggles last year, but this postseason he's been spectacular. This playoff series he's been even better. It's just been remarkable to watch, and you can call him Mr. Martin now by getting to the bank because he's going to cash in after this postseason without a doubt, no doubt in my mind. And it's just good to see. It's great to see a player like Caleb Martin flourishing for the Miami Heat. Some may say he should have won that Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Jimmy Butler averaged right around 24 points per game. So you can flip a coin if you would like. But for me, it was just remarkable to see how well Caleb Martin played. And even in this game, he finished with 26 points, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he finished with 26 and 10. So it was really great to see how well he played. And he was great for Miami tonight. He was hitting big shot after big shot. The moment wasn't too big for him. The stage wasn't too big. So hats off to Caleb Martin on a great game. It was an overall great experience to watch him play on how well he played tonight. But for me, another point I wanted to make was Spo going small was so interesting when Bam went out with those 3 fouls in the first half, because you could have elected to go with Kevin Love. You could have decided to go with Zeller, but but Spo decided to stick with the smaller lineup, the 5 guys, the five smaller guys. It's just a different style of play, and it was just really interesting to see. But he went with Highsmith, who is a Division II player. And when I hear the word D2 now, I think of Mark Matthews, who we just had on our podcast a few days ago, and he was talking about the level of play for Division II players and how the competition isn't much different. There's not much of a drop off, and it's just cool to see Highsmith come in this game, a high energy guy. He actually got a steal on Tatum. He got a fast break in transition, which was really nice to see as well. So now that I think of Division II players, I think of players like Highsmith. I think of Mark Matthews because he played Division I, he played Division II, and there's plenty of other guys in the NBA that are also in Division II or undrafted. So the stage was not too bright for these undrafted players from Miami tonight, and that narrative throughout this entire series has been, kind of annoying, I guess, because in the end, they are still NBA players. That sense of, oh, well, Gabe Vincent was undrafted. Oh, well, Caleb Martin was undrafted. Okay, well, Duncan Robinson was as well. And okay, Strus was. Miami has 5 total undrafted players. If I named 5 right there, then those are your 5. But the point is it doesn't matter if they're undrafted or not, because if they can play in a system and they have a coach that believes in them, it doesn't matter that they're undrafted. It's still they're still professional athletes. They've played at the highest level. They're playing at the highest level of basketball. They played in college, they're playing in the NBA, and they're playing for one of the greatest coaches of all time in a system where they're not expected to do so much. They know their role. They're comfortable in their role on how they play with one another. And Miami was in this position last year. They were in game 7 with Boston last year. They have that experience under their belt. They've got leadership guys. They have veteran guys like Kyle Lowry, Kevin Love. Jimmy Butler's been in this situation before. Spoelstra's been around the NBA for years now. He's been to the finals. He's been to conference finals. So they have guys on their team where they are comfortable in these types of situations. And it showed tonight. It almost felt like Boston just didn't know what they wanted to do. It just like it went back to a few games ago when Boston was down 3-0. It felt like that tonight. Boston had no clue what they wanted to do with the ball. At times they were running their offense through Derek White. At times Tatum was the primary ball handler. At times Jaylen Brown was the primary ball handler. It kind of goes back to the beginning of the series, not knowing what Boston wanted to do. It was painful to watch for Celtics fans, even as a basketball fan, because this team is so talented. This Boston Celtics team is so talented to where seeing them play like this is just, it's painful. And they went 9 of 42 from 3 tonight. They were just jacking up threes. There was no real offense from them. And yeah, you can say Tatum's injury had, a part to do with it because they couldn't find a rhythm. But outside of Tatum, they have Marcus Smart, former Defensive Player of the Year, Jaylen Brown, an all-star, Robert Williams, a great defender, Al Horford, a veteran, high IQ player for a big man. Malcolm Brogdon, yeah, he had the injury. Derek White as well. So, I mean, they have other players outside of Tatum. So there shouldn't really be an excuse of, oh, well, if Tatum this and Tatum that. I understand Tatum has one of the most highest points per games in game 7 history, 28.2. But the point is there's other players on the team that you have where you can sit there and you go, okay, well, if Tatum got hurt, yeah, but he still played throughout the entire game. There's other guys on the team. Boston in the first half, 4 of 21 from 3. The recipe was a recipe for disaster. Playing that style of basketball, it's not going to win you any game. It's not going to win you a game 7. Especially in a situation like this. Your back's up against the wall. You can't make any mistakes. And if your game plan is going into it, we're just going to jack up threes, you got another thing coming for you. I saw on Instagram earlier today that the Rockets in their Western Conference Finals years ago, I'm pretty sure it's against the Warriors, they missed 27 straight threes. That's the same style of basketball that the Celtics played tonight and throughout this entire series. Let's just shoot a bunch of threes and let's see if they go in. So it didn't work out. There was no real offense from Boston tonight. At times, like I said, they would run the offense through Derek White. Tatum was the primary ball handler that Jaylen Brown was, and Jaylen Brown in this offseason, if he does return to Boston or if he leaves, he needs to work on his handle a lot more, because there was times when he would try to drive it and take the ball in transition, and he would lose the ball. As an NBA player, you cannot be losing the ball like that in those types of situations. And I'm sure he will be working on that this offseason, especially because that can take him to the next level. And he's already a premier player in this league, but if he can get that handle under control and control himself in tight game situations where he's more comfortable taking with his left or taking it to the rack with his left or going in transition, he'll flourish more even as a high premier player he is. So, but Miami, 8 of 16 from 3 in the first half. They were hitting tough threes after tough threes. The moment wasn't too big for them. The stage wasn't too big. Just the way they played, they kept their game under control. And that's what really got to me. Watching them play, they didn't turn the ball over. They didn't make many mistakes. They didn't get to the free throw line a ton, but just the way Miami played, they kept it in control. The stage wasn't too big for them. They didn't get too out of control, out of sorts. They were just all in together, all in control. Each player was knowing their role. Jimmy Butler didn't have an amazing effect on the first half. He did finish with 11 points in the first half, but just the way he was controlling the game at his own pace. He wasn't shooting a bunch of shots. He was just playing they were playing together as one. They really weren't running the offense through one exact person. It felt like it was just kind of a collective unit as a group, team oriented, teamwork, and that's really what got to me in the first half. But the role players were huge in the first half, and you can say Caleb Martin's not a role player. He definitely wasn't in this series, but in the grand scheme of things, for his technical term throughout this entire season, he has been a role player. But this series and tonight, he was not a role player. He was the star of tonight. Jimmy Butler had 28, but Caleb Martin was the star. And you can still make an argument that he should have won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. But yeah, like I said, Jimmy played with a great style of pace, just a different style of pace than Game 6. I mean, Game 6 he was abysmal from the field, really not his best game. His last couple games, he was very rocky, very shaky. But tonight, he played a different style of basketball, knowing he was able to kind of pick his spots, wasn't settling for a lot of jump shots. He made 3 threes, which was really cool to see because Jimmy Butler's not the greatest 3-point shooter, and he doesn't take a lot because he knows that's not really his game. But I think Jimmy knew when Tatum had that ankle injury, or when Tatum rolled that ankle, he had the sense of, I can attack I can attack Tatum when he's going to be on me defensively, kind of like I saw like kind of late in the game there. He would take Tatum to the rack, and he knew Tatum couldn't move the right way because of that ankle, and he took it to the Celtics when he needed to. But it was a collective win. It wasn't just all about Jimmy, and it wasn't just through Jimmy. So, but yeah, Miami played aggressive to start the second half. Moving on to the second half here, Miami played extremely aggressive in the second half. They were even full court pressing at times when the third quarter started. So that was also really interesting to see. And Spoelstra put the pressure on Mazzulla. He's like, okay, how is Mazzulla going to react to this? Yeah, I'm sure Mazzulla has seen this in certain situations before, but he's never seen this in a Game 7 because it's his first year. So how can we put the pressure on Mazzulla because at that time Boston was down 11 to start the third quarter from the second half, and he was like, all right, let's put some pressure on Mazzulla. Let's see what he can do. And I know deep down inside, if I'm Eric Spoelstra, that Boston still can't figure out their primary ball defender. They have too many guys. Boston has so much talent, but Spoelstra knew that I'm going to hit you with this full court press, knowing that you're going to have to adjust. We're up 11. The pressure is on you. And it was a great tactician move by one of the greatest coaches of all time, and Eric Spoelstra. In the third quarter, it was a defensive battle. They weren't making a lot of shots. At times, you thought it was really, it was going to hit into the 90s, like it was just going to be a very stagnant game to the finish line. And at times, you just felt that defensive presence there. Al Horford subbed out. Rob Williams came in. He would match up on Jimmy at times. But Tatum gave it his all. That was another thing too. I mean, he was doing everything he could just in himself and in the play style for him, because Tatum likes to get out and pick his spots and kind of take you off the dribble. He likes to play iso ball, but he wasn't able to do that tonight, obviously, with that ankle injury. So it was just tough to watch and all. But fourth quarter, Miami went on a 7-0 run, and that really sealed it right there. That put them up 17. Boston went on a 3-minute scoring drought, and that from that point on there, the game was over. Miami was just taking it to him. Duncan Robinson actually did one of these where he was like, where are you guys at? Like, I'm here, when he hit that 3 in the fourth quarter. But Miami was hitting tough shot after tough shot. The moment wasn't too big for them. They were just hitting these crazy shots, and these are the type of shots that you practice in the offseason. These are the type of shots that you practice in the summer. Now, I know Miami took notes when they lost that Game 7 Eastern Conference Finals last year to the Celtics at their home stadium in Miami, knowing that we can beat this team with whatever happens in the offseason. We know we're going to have basically the exact same unit minus maybe one or two players, and we lost PJ Tucker, but we know we can get this done, and we're very confident. So, but Miami stuck with the zone the entire game. They didn't go into man. They didn't go into they were in a zone. So that was really interesting to see, and they stuck with it. They put the pressure on Boston. They were, Miami was rotating this way, rotating that way. Guys were, ball watching, it was good to see how Spoelstra went with this zone tonight, just watching them, because I'm gonna force you to shoot these tough shots, these tough threes that we know you really haven't made all series, as in Boston, and Miami stuck with that zone, and it was good to see. But recap there, Boston was 9 of 42 from three. Really tough to watch if you're a Celtics fan or just a basketball fan, because watching that style of play when they're not making shots, especially threes, is just hard to watch. Miami was really efficient from three, 14 to 28. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could ask for a better shooting night from three, but I mean, that's pretty darn good right there, 14 to 28. So Jaylen Brown, like I said, he needs to work on that left. He needs to get more comfortable ball handling, if sometimes being the primary ball defender, because at times, but Boston still just didn't know what they wanted to do with ball handling. They just couldn't find the number one guy, and it's weird because they have so much talent on that team. But like I said, they were running through Derek White at times. Sometimes it was through Smart. Sometimes it was through Tatum. Brogdon would come in, and he kind of didn't know what he wanted to do with the ball. Now he gets a pass from me because he was hurt. But the last point I wanted to make here was, is Joe Mazzulla fit for the job? Now, I know everyone was calling for his head after they went down 3-0, and there was a thing that came out that he lost the locker room after, they went down 3-0, and he feels like, the blame is on him. But coming back down 3-0, winning three straight games, for me, is very difficult in the NBA. Winning one game in the playoffs is tough, but winning three straight is even more remarkable. So for me, I don't think you should fire Joe Mazzulla. Why would you? Especially after it's his first year. You just went up against one of the greatest coaches of all time, a tactician, a guy that can eat you alive with the zone, a guy that can eat you alive with undrafted players that aren't as skilled or talented, I guess. But for me, you can't fire Joe Mazzulla. I don't think it makes any sense. It's his first year. He brought you to the Eastern Conference Finals with this roster, and what? Okay, let's say you go and fire Joe Mazzulla, then you got to bring in somebody else, and then they have to learn the whole new system, and then they have to implement their type of style of play. I don't think you fire Joe Mazzulla. I think you keep Joe Mazzulla. You run it back with the same guys. Jaylen Brown is due for that contract that we all know, which is coming up here. Tatum's under contract. Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, Brogdon. So I think you run it back really with the same guys. Maybe you make a trade or two, or you can see what you can do in this offseason, see what Brad Stevens and their front office will do. But I think you stick with Joe Mazzulla. You go back to him, especially. I think the players are comfortable with him. I think after being down 3-0 and then coming back, tying the series 3-3 before tonight, they have that sense of belief in him that we love our coach, we really like him, instead of, how the media is portraying it, because at the end of the day, he's a coach, and you go and get rid of him, you have to go get somebody else. So I just don't think you go get rid of Joe Mazzulla. I think you keep him, you run it back. It's year one. Yeah, Tatum is still very young, and yeah, the Celtics don't really know what they want to do with their primary ball handler. But for me, I think Joe Mazzulla can figure this out with these guys in the offseason. Chemistry is also another thing. They have the pieces. They're arguably the most talented team in the NBA. So I don't think you fire Joe Mazzulla. So I think that does it for me. Game 7 recap with the Heat and the Celtics. A remarkable series all around, from Boston coming back from 3-0, Miami taking a commanding 3-0 lead in this series, Jimmy Butler establishing and asserting his dominance in the beginning of this series, the unfortunate ankle injury from Tatum tonight. Overall, it was a great series. Hats off to Eric Spoelstra and the Miami Heat staff. They deserve their flowers. They proved everybody wrong. They put themselves right back on the map, and Spoelstra proved that he is the best coach in the NBA. So on to Thursday, Nuggets Heat. We will have a game 1 preview, and then we'll have a game 1 recap. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you for the NBA Finals game 1.